Close your eyes and let yourself drift backward through time, past the noise of modern life, past the hum of electricity and the glow of screens. Let the centuries peel away like layers of old paint until you find yourself standing on cobblestone streets that echo with the clip-clop of hooves and the distant chant of prayers. The year is 1118, and something extraordinary is about to begin. Picture 9 men kneeling in a circle, their faces weathered by sun and battle, their hands calloused from years gripping sword hilts. They are not kings or nobles, just knights who have sworn an oath that will echo through history. Their leader, Hugh de Payens, speaks in hushed tones about protection, about pilgrims, about sacred duty, but there is something in his eyes, something that suggests their mission runs deeper than guarding travellers on dusty roads. These are the founding members of what would become the most powerful, most mysterious, and most feared organisation in medieval Europe, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, the Knights Templar. Now, you might think you know their story. You've heard the tales of warrior monks, of crusading knights who fought with crosses on their chests and steel in their hearts. You've probably read about their wealth, their downfall, their supposed treasures hidden in Scottish castles or American oak trees. But tonight, as sleep begins to claim you, we're going to explore something far stranger, far more unsettling than anything Hollywood has ever imagined. Because what if the Templars didn't just guard pilgrims? What if they didn't just accumulate wealth and power? What if, in the shadowed halls beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, they discovered something that changed them forever? Something that made them question not just their faith, but the very nature of reality itself. Let your breathing slow as we descend into the depths of history, into chambers where torchlight flickers against ancient stone, where secrets older than Christianity itself lie waiting in the darkness. You're about to hear about the light the Templars found beneath Jerusalem, and why what they saw there would ultimately lead to their destruction. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem has always been a place of power. Long before the first Christians set foot on its ancient stones, it pulsed with the energy of countless prayers, countless sacrifices, countless moments when the divine seemed to touch the earth. Solomon built his temple there, a structure so magnificent that its very existence seemed to prove the favour of God. But Solomon's temple was destroyed, rebuilt, destroyed again, until only the memory of its glory remained. When the Crusaders took Jerusalem in 1099, they found the Dome of the Rock sitting where Solomon's temple once stood. It was a Muslim holy site, beautiful and serene. But to Christian eyes, it was also a reminder of conquest, of sacred space claimed by another faith. And beneath it, according to legend, lay the ruins of Solomon's original temple, the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant once rested. The 9 knights who would become the Templars arrived in Jerusalem 19 years after its conquest. They presented themselves to King Baldwin II with a simple request. They wanted to protect pilgrims travelling the dangerous roads between the coast and the Holy City. It was a noble cause, and the king granted them quarters in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which the Crusaders had converted into a royal palace. The location was significant because the mosque sat directly on top of the Temple Mount, the very spot where Solomon's temple once stood. But here's where the official story begins to crack like old parchment. 9 men, no matter how skilled, could not possibly patrol the hundreds of miles of roads that pilgrims travelled. The mathematics simply don't work. And yet, for 9 years, these knights remained based at the Temple Mount, rarely venturing out, rarely recruiting new members. What were they really doing? Contemporary accounts, sparse as they are, mention strange sounds coming from beneath the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Local workers reported the knights digging at all hours, their torches visible through cracks in the ancient stones long into the night. When questioned, the Templars spoke vaguely of repairs, of maintenance, of ensuring the stability of their quarters. But repairs don't require years of excavation. Repairs don't demand the secrecy that seemed to shroud their every action. And then, in 1127, something changed. The 9 knights suddenly left Jerusalem and returned to Europe. They travelled to France, to the court of nobles and church officials, and they were no longer poor soldiers scraping by on charity. They carried letters, they spoke with authority, and most mysteriously of all, they possessed knowledge that made powerful men listen. Within 2 years, they had gained the official recognition of the Church at the Council of Troyes. They were given their own rule, their own distinctive white mantles marked with red crosses. Money began to flow in from across Europe. Nobles donated land, kings granted privileges, and the Church bestowed blessings that elevated them above ordinary military orders. The transformation was so rapid, so complete, that it defied explanation. What had 9 poor knights discovered beneath the Temple Mount that could command such respect, such resources, such immediate elevation to the highest levels of Christian society? Some claimed they had found the Ark of the Covenant, that ancient chest containing the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments. Others whispered of scrolls, documents that revealed secrets about the life of Christ or the true history of Christianity. But a few voices, quickly silenced, spoke of something else entirely. They spoke of a chamber beneath the Temple Mount, where the Templars had encountered light itself, but not the light of God as they had expected. The light they found was older, stranger, more complex than anything their theology had prepared them to understand. It was a light that revealed truths about the nature of existence, about the relationship between matter and spirit, about forces that move through the universe according to laws far more ancient than any human religion. As you drift deeper into sleep, imagine those 9 knights standing in that underground chamber, their torches casting dancing shadows on walls carved with symbols they couldn't read, in languages they'd never heard. The air around them seems to shimmer, to pulse with an energy that makes their skin crawl and their hearts race. And then, suddenly, the chamber fills with light. But it's not the warm, comforting light of heaven they expected. This light is cold, analytical, revealing. It shows them things about themselves, about their world, about the cosmos itself that no medieval mind was prepared to comprehend. Tomorrow night we'll descend further into this mystery, exploring what the Templars learned in that chamber of light and how that knowledge would transform them from simple knights into the most powerful and feared organization in Europe. Picture that chamber now, that hollowed space beneath centuries of prayer and conquest, where 9 medieval minds encountered something that would shatter their understanding of everything they believed sacred. The light they found wasn't just illumination, it was revelation, but not the kind their monastery training had prepared them for. As their eyes adjusted to that otherworldly glow, the Templars began to see what generations of mystics and scholars had hidden in plain sight. The walls around them weren't just stone, they were covered in symbols that seemed to shift and dance in the strange radiance. Hebrew letters intertwined with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Star configurations that mapped not earthly territories, but pathways through dimensions of existence their Christian cosmology had never acknowledged. Hugh de Payens, their leader, reached out to touch one of the carved symbols and felt his hand tingle with an energy that seemed to flow from the rock itself. This wasn't the dead stone of ordinary construction. This was something alive, something that had been waiting beneath Jerusalem for centuries, perhaps millennia, for the right minds to discover it. The scrolls they found weren't written on ordinary parchment, but on a material that seemed to absorb and reflect the chamber's light. The text wasn't in Latin or Greek or Hebrew as they expected, but in languages that predated any known civilization. Yet somehow, impossibly, they could read it. The light itself seemed to translate the words directly into their consciousness, bypassing their eyes entirely. What they read changed everything. These weren't accounts of biblical history or lost gospels describing the life of Christ. These were technical manuals, instruction guides for manipulating the fundamental forces that held reality together. The scrolls described the universe not as the creation of a singular divine being, but as a vast machine operating according to principles that could be understood, predicted, and most importantly, controlled. The knowledge was intoxicating. They learned about energy fields that permeated all matter, about consciousness as a force that could reshape physical reality, about technologies so advanced they seemed like magic to medieval minds. But with each revelation came a growing unease. If this knowledge was true, then everything the Church taught about the nature of God, of creation, of humanity's place in the cosmos, was at best incomplete, and at worst deliberately misleading. Geoffrey de Saint-Omer, one of the 9 founders, discovered a series of crystalline devices embedded in the chamber walls. When activated by touch, they projected images into the air above them, 3-dimensional maps of the Earth as it truly was, a sphere floating in a vast ocean of stars. They saw their own solar system, tiny and insignificant, just one of countless others scattered throughout an universe so immense it made their terrestrial concerns seem laughably petty. But the most disturbing revelation came when they learned about consciousness itself. The scrolls described human awareness not as a gift from God, but as a fragment of something much larger, a cosmic intelligence that had been deliberately fragmented and scattered across countless individual minds to prevent it from recognizing its own power. Death, according to these texts, was merely a transition between states of being, and what they called the soul was simply information that could be transferred, stored, and even replicated. André de Montbard stared at diagrams showing the human body as an energy system, with specific points where this cosmic consciousness interfaced with physical matter. These weren't the mystical chakras of Eastern traditions, but precise anatomical locations where consciousness could be enhanced, expanded, or even severed entirely from its biological housing. The implications were staggering. If consciousness could be manipulated, then free will itself might be an illusion. If human awareness was just a fragment of something larger, then individual identity was meaningless. And if death was merely a transition, then the entire structure of Christian salvation, with its emphasis on eternal reward and punishment, became nothing more than a control mechanism designed to keep humanity ignorant of its true nature. Payen de Montdidier found himself studying what appeared to be historical records stretching back tens of thousands of years. Civilizations rose and fell in cycles, each one eventually discovering the same truths the Templars were now learning. And each time, a select group would use this knowledge to establish control over the masses, becoming the hidden rulers operating from behind the facade of whatever religious or political system dominated their era. The pattern was always the same. The knowledge would be discovered, carefully guarded by an initiated elite, and then used to manipulate human civilization towards specific goals. Wars were orchestrated, religions founded, entire cultures guided along predetermined paths by those who understood the true mechanics of reality. As dawn approaches and sleep finally claims you, let yourself drift with one final thought. The Templars found their light beneath Jerusalem, but it wasn't the divine illumination they sought. It was knowledge so profound, so dangerous, that it would ultimately consume them. They became guardians of truths too vast for medieval minds to safely contain, keepers of secrets that challenged the very foundations of human understanding. Sweet dreams,